The first thing I remember from the funeral wasn't the coffin. It wasn't the flowers, or the speeches, or even the quiet sobbing behind me. It was her voice. Sharp, loud, completely out of place. "Excuse me," a woman barked from the second row, standing up like she owned the room. "Before we go any further, I'd like to know where the will is." Every head turned. I froze. We were standing beside my grandfather's casket. The man who raised me, the man who worked those lands for over 60 years, the man we were burying that very morning. And this woman, this HOA Karen I had never spoken to in my life, was demanding paperwork. "I'm sorry," the pastor said carefully. She crossed her arms. "I'm the HOA president for the surrounding properties. We need to confirm ownership immediately. You can't just assume land transfers without documentation." My hands started shaking. Not from fear, from disbelief. This woman had followed us to a funeral. I felt my aunt grip my arm, whispering, "Ignore her." But Karen didn't stop. She pointed at me. You're the grandson, right? Do you even know what you inherited?" The room was silent. I swallowed. "This is not the time," she scoffed. "Oh, it absolutely is. Because if there's no valid will, all that land defaults back into managed jurisdiction." That's when it hit me. She thought my grandfather's 900 acres were up for grabs. She thought she could step in, intimidate, and take control right there, beside his coffin. I felt something harden in my chest. "My grandfather's will was filed years ago," I said slowly, "and it's none of your business." Her lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that." The funeral ended in stunned silence. People avoided eye contact as Karen marched out ahead of everyone else, already on her phone, already plotting. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, I got my first notice. A thick envelope, HOA letterhead, bold red text, "Unauthorized land ownership review." They claimed portions of the land violated HOA boundaries, claimed my grandfather had been non-compliant for decades, claimed fines totaling 6 figures. I laughed at first. Then I saw the maps. They weren't just targeting the edge of the property. They were claiming nearly all of it. Fields, forest, water rights, access roads. 900 acres, my grandfather's life's work. That's when I realized Karen hadn't interrupted a funeral out of disrespect. She did it because she thought I was weak, young, grieving, easy to scare. She thought I wouldn't fight. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that my grandfather had spent the last 10 years preparing for someone exactly like her. And everything she was about to do, he had already anticipated. The next time I saw Karen, it wasn't at my house. It was at the county land office. She was already there when I walked in, standing by the counter with a stack of papers and that same confident smile, like the place belonged to her. She didn't look surprised to see me. In fact, she looked pleased. "Well," she said, turning slowly, eyes scanning me like an inspection. "I was wondering how long it would take you." I didn't respond. I walked past her, took a number, and sat down. She followed. "You should really get a lawyer," she continued, lowering her voice like she was doing me a favor. "These things can get complicated, especially when land hasn't been properly governed." I finally looked at her. "This land was governed just fine," I said, "by my grandfather." She laughed. "That's not governance. That's neglect." That was the moment I understood exactly who she was. Not someone who cared about rules, someone who wanted territory. When my number was called, I stood up and approached the clerk. Karen stepped right beside me like she belonged there. "I'm here regarding parcel consolidation," the clerk said, flipping through my file. 900 acres, correct?" "Yes," I answered. Karen leaned forward. "We're disputing that." The clerk paused. "On what grounds?" Karen slid her papers across the counter. "Historic HOA jurisdiction. Improper fencing. Non-compliance going back decades." The clerk skimmed the documents, then frowned. "These filings are unusual." Karen's smile tightened. "Unusual doesn't mean invalid." The clerk nodded slowly. No, but it does mean we need to pull the original deeds. She disappeared into the back. Karen crossed her arms. This could all go away, she said quietly. You sign over management rights. The HOA handles everything. You keep a small portion. Everyone wins. I shook my head. You followed a grieving family to a funeral. Her eyes hardened. Business doesn't pause for death. The clerk returned carrying a thick, worn folder. This is the original land grant, she said, placing it gently on the counter. Filed in 1948, Karen leaned in, and then she went very still. The clerk continued. This property is not subject to HOA authority. It never was. It predates the surrounding developments by over 40 years. Karen opened her mouth. The clerk kept going. There's also a conservation exemption, mineral rights reservation, and private access easement registered to the owner and heirs. Karen's face drained of color. That's not possible, she snapped. We've been issuing notices for years. The clerk looked up. Then you've been issuing them illegally. Karen left without another word, but she wasn't done. Within a week, surveyors showed up on my land without permission. Stakes appeared along tree lines. HOA boundary review signs were hammered into the soil. I pulled them out by hand. The next day, I received a cease and desist letter from an HOA attorney. The day after that, I received something else. A package, no return address. Inside was a leather-bound journal. My grandfather's handwriting filled every page. Dates, names, maps, copies of correspondence, and one final letter addressed to me. If you're reading this, someone is trying to take what they couldn't earn. He had documented everything. Every time someone tried to claim a piece of the land, every time an HOA expanded by mistake, every threat, every false fine, he had recorded meetings, saved voicemails, even kept photos of Karen herself years earlier measuring fence lines and trespassing. At the bottom of the letter, he wrote one sentence: "Give this to the county and let them do the rest." So I did. The investigation didn't take long. Turns out Karen had been quietly collecting administrative fees from multiple landowners, redirecting funds, falsifying records, pressuring elderly owners into signing over rights they didn't understand. My grandfather wasn't her first target. He was just the one who prepared. The day Karen was served papers, she stood in her driveway screaming about harassment and corruption. 2 weeks later, the HOA board voted her out unanimously. A month later, the county filed charges. Fraud, misrepresentation, abuse of authority. The land claims were dismissed permanently. At the final hearing, Karen didn't look at me. She stared straight ahead while the judge read the ruling. All claims against the inherited property are null. Ownership is affirmed in full. 900 acres, clear, untouched, mine. Afterward, I drove out to the highest hill on the land just before sunset. The wind moved through the grass the way it always had. I thought about the funeral, about her voice cutting through grief, about how close she thought she was to winning something that was never hers. And I realized something. My grandfather didn't just leave me land. He left me proof. He left me protection. And he left behind a reminder that some people mistake silence for weakness. They're always wrong.